Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Today is Monday, December 16th, 2019. This is our GoldFish Report number 417 and POTUS Report week 151. And I am joined with me by my friend, the most dangerous mind in America, my buddy, the Fetz. How are you, Jim?
Hey, Louisa, terrific. I was interviewed by Sputnik News, perhaps the leading international news service in the world today, about the impeachment hearings, and explained all the reasons why it looks as though the Democrats are going to go down hard in 2020. We now have a breaking news development. Well, I will present subsequently that reinforces a calamity for the Democrats. This is all backfiring massively.
Okay, we're going to play that video in a minute as soon as I report on a few things that happened over the past week. But it is from the appearance of it, it is breaking news, as Jim said. Jim, how do the Iranians think? I mean, it must be like a fiasco. You know, it's political theater, but they must, I mean, are they surprised at what's going on here, or was it just a matter of time, they felt?
Sputnik, this is a Russian news service, not Iranian.
I'm sorry, not Iranian, Sputnik. What did they think?
Well, I published my article and we're very grateful to have it. So I think what's going on, and they're paying very close attention, especially because so much of this revolves again over the ridiculous fantasy of the Russiagate involvement, that Russia hacked our elections, which everyone ought to understand by now is not even a remote approximation of the truth.
Okay, I want to play a little clip here of Lindsey Graham opening up this, kind of laying out this whole FISA abuse. We know this FISA application, the whole thing was abuse. It was hearsay based on hearsay. The initiation of the whole investigation, as everybody knows, was, overhearing a 28-year-old Papadopoulos volunteer of the campaign say something about that Russia had some kind of, a dirt on Hillary because they had hacked into her server. But at the same point in time, in that May of 2016, I believe it was, you had Fox News reporting the same thing, and they were deciding whether or not they were going to bury the story or keep talking about it. So there was no, to predicate this, and Attorney General Barr went publicly talking about how he's not commenting on the predication of, starting the investigation until Durham's report is released, and rightfully so, because they had different auspices. They had different goals. Each of these reports have different goals. So it basically, was a fishing expedition looking for anything against Trump. And that's really what it was. It was an abuse of power. It was the deep state. It was the Democrats looking for anything they could to destroy the president. And I'm just going to play a little clip right here of Lindsey Graham kind of, hitting it out of the ballpark with regard to this failed system that we have here. And hopefully it won't be very long. Oh, hold on a second.
Mr. Horowitz, I'm dying to hear from you, but I bet I haven't made.
Sorry about that. I just want to make sure the volume was up.
20 minutes of opening statements in a year. But I'm going to take a little bit longer to try to lay out what I think is before us as a nation. Crossfire Hurricane was probably the best name ever given to an investigation in the history of investigations, because I think that's what we wound up with, a crossfire and a hurricane. There's been a lot of media reports about your report before it was issued. And I remember reading all these headlines, lawful investigation with a few irregularities. Everything okay, low-level people kind of got off track. If that's what you get out of this report, you clearly didn't read it. If that's your takeaway, that this thing was lawfully predicated, and that's the main point, you missed the entire report. How do you get a headline like that? That's what you want it to be. You want it to be that and nothing more. And I can assure you, if this had been a Democratic president going through what President Trump had gone through, that would not have been the headline. The headline would be, the FBI takes law into its own hands. Right. Biased agents cut corners, lie to court, ignore exoneration. So the first thing I want you to know is how the cake is baked here. And my goal is to make sure that people, when this is over, whether you like Trump, hate Trump, don't care about Trump, you look at this as more than a few irregularities. Because if this becomes a few irregularities in America, then God help us all. Now,
it's very true, Jim, because what he's talking about is an abusive process that happens every day in our court systems to people like you and me. And in fact, they are happening to people like you and me. These are abuses of power. These are people who twist the truth. They twist facts. They just use deception to build a case. They may take a fabric, a thread of truth, but what's built on that is a house of cards, and it's all coming down on them. We're going to see this unfold. We're going to stand by. Attorney General Barr did another great interview talking about this in detail, and talking about how he wait until more come out, because not only did they, even if they felt like they had some sort of, bona fide purpose to start an investigation, the resources they used were clearly, first of all, they didn't go right to the Trump campaign to start their investigation. So instead of that, they started, they went and they got this FISA. They misled the FISA court. They left out exculpatory information. Even after their investigation fell apart initially, they went back for more FISA renewals of this FISA search warrant and didn't inform the FISA court that nobody was confirming this information, and that there was no evidence to support any of this. They left out exculpatory information that this was paid for by the DNC. They left out information. In fact, not only did they leave out information, Jim, but they tried to bolster it and make it sound like there was more evidence than there actually was. So there was clearly not only bad faith, but you will see what the Durham investigation will ultimately reveal in terms of, I believe, Jim, if I'm not mistaken, there are going to be criminal referrals made from this. So we'll wait and see on that. Okay, moving along. We know that the president attended the Army-Navy game over the weekend, and I had a photo of it, or I'm sorry, I had a quick screen share that I wanted to share for viewers in case you didn't see this. This is our Twitter page, and
assembled before you now.
Hold on a second.
Over 4,000 strong, hailing from
okay.
states in the Union and its territories. Ladies and
this was pretty cool looking. Hold on a second.
No sound. No sound, Louisa. There's no sound.
You can't hear it? I think it's recording okay, though. Okay, I just wanted to play a little bit of it, folks. Jim's saying he can't hear it, but it should be okay in the recording. So I also want to, so that was good. The Navy won, and the score was 31-7. Jim tutored me. He schooled me today on the right way to tell the the winning score. Thank you, Jim. We also have some interesting news. Let me also just go to the blog, which I'm going to screen share as well. And I'm just going to show you very quickly the pictures in review, the week in review. Here we have the president at the IAC National Summit 2019. I'm going to go through this quickly because I'm not going to give my opinion. This is not, another state of the United States. Israel is its own country. It's according to the farewell speech of George Washington. He specifically states we should not be showing this kind of favoritism and meddling or with other countries. So I do think that I find this problematic to be this supportive to this degree with Israel. But here he is. This is the national summit, so he attended this. I mean, I'm just talking about our overall policy regarding Israel. If he wants to attend, a summit, that's fine. But he definitely, has a very preferential opinion of Israel. Anyway, and I'm not anti-Israel. I think they should, do their own thing, um, but I think that they can form alliances with other countries, and I think we've done enough, actually. So here we have the president and the vice president at the round table, empowering families with education choice. This is great because they've been a strong proponent of families in the whole policy. I'm sorry, in the whole. Um, uh, I guess since the inauguration, or actually since the campaign, he was talking about family and supporting families, and of course, Family Leave Act, which or policy, which we're going to talk about as well. So here he's meeting here, and of course the First Lady, our glorious First Lady, who was working at an event for Toys for Tots for kids here during this holiday season, and here she is with some of the children that were there. Yes, it was a photo op, but it shows that she's genuine, because she's really showing genuine emotion here for children. So if nothing else, it's that. Yes, these are photo ops, but you can see she's extremely genuine. She's very comfortable with children and loves children, and that's really beautiful. It's wonderful. And here she is greeting some of the people who were working there. It's holiday time. These are typical media events and charity events that the first ladies get involved in. And here we have the swearing in of uh, Kip Tom, who is the ambassador to the United Nations for Food and Agriculture. And then here we have Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov with President Trump in the White House, in the Oval Office. And so that was interesting. So he met with a lot of world leaders this week as well. And here's the president with Stephen Mnuchin, that's the Treasury Secretary. And of course, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, along the right outside the Rose Garden, alongside the West Wing there, the Oval Office. Sorry, it's a Monday, folks. Got to get my head together. Here we have the president. A few other pictures. I'll go through this quickly. Here's a swearing in of Energy Secretary. What's his name? Energy. So Dan Brule. And so here we have a Hanukkah ceremony at the White House. You have the First Lady. You have the First Family there attending. Here's more pictures of that, and you can go to my blog and look at it. The president, of course, as everybody knows, signed an executive order last week regarding combating anti-Semitism. That's interesting. I think we should read that in more detail, but I'm not going to do that at the moment. I don't think that just because you criticize Israeli policy that's being anti-Semitic, but that's how they try to get away with shutting down any kind of adverse or any kind of opposition, any kind of opponent. So you have to be careful that you're not calling something anti-Semitic just because you disagree with their policy. So we'll be careful with that. We'll see how that goes. I mean, I have lots of close friends who are Jewish. I'm not anti-Semitic whatsoever, but again, it has to do with policy. This is we have, what's his name, Mark Levin, whose radio program is also awesome. He's attending that reception as well there. And this is interesting because they had to turn, in order to do this event, they had to turn the White House kitchen into a kosher kitchen. And so here you have the rabbis that were involved in this event, cleaning the kitchen in a particular manner to present the food as kosher. So that was interesting. And then here you had the second lady, Karen Pence, who's working on Christmas decorations with congressional spouses. So that's, again, another one of these events that they do at the holiday time. And you have the president here talking about, this is what we're talking about before, the White House Summit on Childcare and Paid Leave. So we're going to take a look at this. And here's some more pictures. There's a prayer going on in that the White House, and you know that this is part of Trump's daily activity. There's a daily prayer that he does. So it's nice to see that he's a tough business person. He's the master of the art of the deal, but he's a spiritual person, and that that's shows that there's something above him, some higher force or power above him, and that he's simply. I think he really does take his role as a um, an intermediary to do good things. Whether he's taking good advice or not, is debatable. But here we have Mike Pence, and this is the Christmas reception at the White House. One of them. There's another one this evening, and you have them coming down the stairs. Everybody's got their phones out, of course, to capture the moment. You have Melania and the first, and of course the vice president and the Karen Pence there as well. And the president stops to take a few pictures during the event with some people, and it was very nice. So you can go look. Of course, we had the president. The Paraguay president Mario Abdo Benitez, who was here on Friday the 13th. This is some policy they were talking about. Very good. Obviously, it looks like they have very good relations going on here. And here is a senior advisor meeting with the president and, of course, the Paraguayan president as well. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about today is this coming up here. This is a big deal. The China first phase of the trade deal is essentially inked, with waiting for some translation to be made final. This is the big deal. This is the big kahuna everybody's waiting for. Some things that I wanted to point out about this is that Larry Kudlow stopped this morning outside for a press gaggle. I used to attend those. I miss going there. And he gave he answered some questions and answers to the media. And basically the trade deal is, the president said this first phase is done. It's a big deal. And he answered some questions. Basically, in a nutshell, what's going on here is there's four main categories, and there are subcategories. We're talking about tariff adjustments. We're also talking about a schedule of Chinese purchases of American goods and services. The details are not released yet. There's some things that, according to Larry Kudlow, are going to be kept confidential, I guess, because it might create some sort of unfair advantage to someone or to the markets if it was released early. So they don't want to be involved in market manipulation, and that's the bottom line. There's also financial services reform that includes currency reform. There's also intellectual property rights reform and forced transfer of technology reform. It will be signed in a week or two, like I said, after all the legal wording and translations are finalized, but they're saying phase 2 of this deal will begin shortly thereafter, if not already started. So, of course, the press have to bring negativity into everything, the mainstream media, and they're trying to say, well, it's not really, it doesn't have any bite, it's not really that substantial, and, they beg to differ. And Larry Kudlow went on to explain that. But one of the things that I do want to screen share, sorry for this, but it is a blog and that's how it works, is we're going to talk about, just very quickly, I wanted to report on the financial services aspect and the currency aspect, because I think a lot of people see the writing on the wall. We've been talking about this for a while, that there is going to be, that there is a global currency reset going on at this time. We know China just introduced a gold-backed, now called petro yuan, so which other countries are now kind of pegging their a currency too as well. So this is a big deal, folks. I think we're getting ready to have this new treasury note introduced, and I'm trying to find this part. Here it is. Okay. So the question was, I was wondering if you could talk about the currency provision that's in the agreement, whether that includes central banks, whether or not the chapter in the deal is modeled on the USMCA, and any other details that you can provide on currency issue. And the senior administration official said, great, thank you. And it's based on what we had in the USMCA, similar to that. He goes on to say that it includes both policy and transparency commitments in that area, and it requires commitments to refrain from competitive devaluations and targeting of exchange rates. It would also significantly increase transparency and provide mechanisms for accountability and enforcement. And these are enforceable commitments. meaning that there, he says here, macroeconomic exchange rate stability and ensure that China cannot use its currency practices to unfairly compete against U.S. exports. So that's what it's all about, and that's why the president has been so concerned, and that's why trade has been the big deal, because it all has to do with currency. So again, we're talking about specific commitments, we're talking about intellectual property, technology transfer, agricultural structural issues. These are not insignificant issues, financial services, currency, and foreign exchange as well. So this is a really big accomplishment for the president. And do you hear them talk about it in any detail on the mainstream news? And you don't. What you hear about is the spin about this. There was no collusion. There was no nothing. But they keep spinning that. So they are really only interested in wanting to convince the American people of some BS that's going on. So let me wrapping up my subjects I'm reporting on today. I wanted to screen share this. So I have two. This is the second to last. This is, in fact, what Donald Trump signed last week, an executive order committing to supporting working families. This is regarding paid family leave. So this is for working families. President Trump has made expanding access to child care and paid family leave a priority of his administration. And folks, that is so huge. If you can't get child care, you can't be a working parent to generate income. It's really a catch-22. We can't, everybody, you can't tell somebody they can't have children. Everybody has a right to have children, but somebody has got to work at McDonald's and serve your food, and they're not going to make as much money as you do. So, but they still need to have childcare that's affordable to them. So, it is about egalitarianism. It's about really basic, fundamental ways that you can help families, because of course the government shouldn't solve all of our problems. We should be solving them ourselves. But this is one on a policy level that could, it's kind of like, I look at it like the Americans with Disabilities Act. It kind of creates a standard so that everybody somehow can get some help with childcare, and that contributes to a quality of life. So he's talking about this. You can go on the website, on our blog, and check this out. I'm going to have this, but basically this is a pro-growth policy that the president is putting into place. He's talking about tax cuts and Job Act cuts taxes for American families and implemented reforms that help families get ahead. He's talking about a $500 tax credit for dependents age 17 years and older. And also they doubled the child tax credit, benefiting nearly 40 million American families with an average of over $2,200 in 2019. And also the president is saying here over 600,000 children being raised by single mothers were lifted out of poverty in 2018. I'd like to see what backs that up, but as a working single mother, I'd like to see how that translates. So anyway, the unemployment rate has dropped. 7 million new jobs have been created, and you can go and check this out. And the last thing that I wanted to screen share was more evidence that, not sure if this showed, but more evidence that the executive order of December 21st, 2017 is actually in action. What we're looking at here was last week, the statement by Secretary Michael Pompeo was talking about the United States takes action against corruption and serious human rights abuse. Of course, the president last week recognized the here it is right here, as the world recognized International Anti-Corruption Day on December 9th and International Human Rights Day on December 10th. The United States is doing its part to promote accountability by remaining committed to the American ideals underpinning this global Magnitsky. Now, this global Magnitsky, this is what it's called, the Global Magnitsky Act. It's Executive Order 13818. And this is about freezing funds. This is an action. This is the action that they're taking regarding people who are convicted of or involved in engaging in serious human rights abuse, including, trafficking and things of that nature. So this gives them the power to freeze the funds. And it's an executive order in action, folks. And I think we should be happy about that. And that concludes my topics of report today regarding the president, Jim. And if you want, I'll start out with that video that you wanted to play. Do you want me to start out with that video?
Well, let me explain. There's been what appears to be a major new development where Rudy Giuliani, who has been repeatedly lampooned as a buffoon, appears to have dug up a lot of serious evidence implicating Joe Biden in money laundering and other misadventures in Ukraine, as a consequence of which it now appears that Biden has decided to withdraw from the 2020 Democratic contest for the nomination. Assuming all of this is correct, and as you will see, the speaker produces a whole lot of references, citations, and so forth in its support, it's going to have vast consequences and ramifications, including for the effort to impeach the president, because it really shows there was a bona fide corruption on one side, namely the Democrats, namely by Joe Biden in defense of his son Hunter, and not on the other. I believe now, and for other reasons I shall address, that the impeachment motion isn't going to make it out of the House of Representatives, that there are going to be too many defections, and that at most there will be a censure resolution against the president. Watch this video now, and then I'll continue to explain all of the other reasons why it looked to me that this impeachment was backfiring on the Democrats massively.
Jim, it's an 8-minute video. I could also provide the link to it in the description section. So how much of it do you want to play?
I've deliberately reduced the length of my presentation to include it.
Okay, it's just that, you know, I don't want to get a copyright strike on the card. So hopefully I'll have to edit it if I do, if YouTube tells me that. I usually don't play this long.
Okay, play 4 minutes or whatever. You get the idea.
We'll see. Okay, yeah, you let me know. That's how they are these days, YouTube. We just have to live within these new restrictions. All right, here it is, folks.
Hey everybody, Christopher Green, AMTV Alternative Media Television. As December 15, 2019, an emergency report on this Sunday. Please share it, get it out to your friends and family. Like this video, also click the bell. Major bombshell that you will not hear on the mainstream media. You're not going to hear this at the bought and paid for lamestream statist propaganda media cartel like CNN, even Fox News. We throw them in there as well. Just like Trump says, Fox News is dying right now, like CNN and MSNBC. You're not going to hear any of this but at Alternative Media Television and within the alternative media itself. In fact, I have Chad Booksam reporting on this as well. It appears Joe Biden is going down in a ball of flames, and he'll be dropping out of the race very soon, in my opinion, as a result of this bombshell evidence, accusations dropped by Giuliani, who spoke today this morning, revealing huge money laundering operation tied in to Ukraine, Burisma Holdings. Allegedly, these are the accusations, Hunter Biden, his son, were laundering millions and millions of dollars back to the funnel that makes up Joe Biden, and at the time, the Barack Obama administration. Now, understand what a bombshell this is. Accusations of money laundering, corruption at the highest law of the land, and attempted murder, according to Giuliani. Let's get into this here. Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, taunted the deep state Democrat media complex Sunday morning and said he will be sharing evidence he has garnered through hundreds of hours of research. He tweeted this earlier. He said, "Stay tuned as we anticipated what was about to drop and come out. In my next thread of tweets, I will be sharing some of the evidence I have garnered through hundreds of hours of research. Turn notifications on and stay tuned." Rudy Giuliani traveled to Hungary and Ukraine a couple of weeks ago, met with officials in Kyiv in his ongoing efforts to expose corruption and pay-to-play schemes involving, these are the accusations, the Biden crime family and other Democrats. Mr. Giuliani revealed last Monday morning on Stephen Bannon's radio show. By the way, Stephen Bannon agrees with me. Hillary Clinton is running for president of the United States. She's going to announce very soon. that he was working to release a report on his findings from his latest trip to Europe to Attorney General Bill Barr and GOP lawmakers in Congress. Mayor Giuliani also appeared on the OWN network. I encourage you to tune into that as well at OAN. A few hours after his initial tweet on Sunday, Rudy began dropping bombshells one tweet at a time. He said this: Viktor Shokin, the Ukrainian prosecutor general investigating Burisma Holdings, was not only fired after Biden threatened to withhold aid from Ukraine, but that he was poisoned, allegedly, and barely survived it. Said that this guy was poisoned. This is the accusation. Shokin holds documents proving money laundering by Burisma and Biden and his son. He was fired due to VP Joe Biden at the time's threat, which is all admitted on camera. Joe Biden has said this himself. The mainstream media doesn't care because, again, all they're for is the establishment. All they're for is Barack Obama, Joe Biden. They only care about attacking Trump. They won't put out evidence or information, even when we have it, even when we have this damaging information out. He said he was fired due to VP Joe Biden's threat not to release $1 billion in vital U.S. aid. Now, what's interesting about this is what the Democrats are accusing Trump of doing, even though he didn't do it. Biden's on record saying he actually did it. We can even show you the video. He says he's actually done it. And nobody cares. I mean, this is what fake news is. The mainstream media only focusing on Trump to attack him, but won't, put out the same kind of information when it doesn't fit whatever narrative they're trying to speak to the American public. Then Giuliani goes on to say this: Shokin's medical records show he was poisoned, died twice, and then was later revived. Quote, lots of heads will roll in Ukraine if this opens up. So all of a sudden, Shokin gets this communique from Latvia that shows a $16 million laundering transaction, allegedly. Classic laundering, money laundering, Giuliani says. It goes from Ukraine to Latvia. It's disguised as a loan to another company, to Wire Logic. They're passing all these funds through, allegedly, I believe. Then it goes to Cyprus, a little island, gets disguised as another loan. Then they call it Digitech. Then it's dispersed as payment as board fees, he adds. So he says now you don't need to make two loans to board fees unless you're laundering the money. So he's accusing money laundering. This is what Joe Biden, they're saying he did. $3 million gets to Hunter Biden, his son, in that way. This is a straight out violation of a money laundering statute. Now, again, he does an interview on OWN earlier today. I encourage you to watch that. Also, I think the Gateway Pundit, which I want to do a shout out to them. I thought they did a pretty darn good job covering the story as well. He's part of it for this report today. So the point is, Joe Biden is going down. He is going down. High likelihood of him dropping out of the race very, very soon. This is a bombshell cover-up being covered up by the mainstream media, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. Nobody's going to talk about it because, again, this deep state mainstream media is controlled. It's controlled. It favors the liberal agenda. It favors the liberal socialist candidates, and they will not report this damaging evidence, which is why you're here. That's why you're sharing this video worldwide, getting it out to your friends and family. This is huge. Also, just want to remind you, Hillary Clinton will be announcing a run for 2020 very, very, very soon. I spoke about this yesterday. She's had some plastic surgery done, these kinds of things, fattened up the cheeks. She had something weird going on in her lip yesterday as well, but she will be announcing very, very soon. Please get this message out. I love you guys. I hope you're having a great Sunday. Jesus Christ.
Is that good, Jim?
Yeah, that was fine.
That's amazing stuff, Jim.
Why I wanted you to include it today. Yes.
Indeed. Plastic surgery. She needs a lot more than plastic surgery. Sorry.
Let me turn now to the massive additional evidence independent of this new bombshell. The defeat of the Liberals in the UK appears to presage what is overwhelmingly likely to happen to the Democrats here in the USA, where the bloodbath sends a catastrophic warning to the 2020 Democrats. Boris Johnson, who's been described as the Donald Trump of Britain, his Tories or Conservatives won 365 seats in Parliament's lower chamber, with Labour, the Liberal or Democrats, picking up only 203. It hands the Conservatives their biggest majority since the days of Margaret Thatcher, the worst showing for Labour since the 1930s. They have been left shell-shocked after a night that saw once safe seats in working-class areas turn Tory. with enormous swings that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. It's a lesson many in the UK and the US are saying should be a warning for Democrats who think that victory lies with an uncompromising agenda featuring government health care, immigration, enforcement, rollbacks, and more. Democrats like Senator Sanders and Warren have promoted far-reaching policies such as Medicare for all and a halt to deportations of illegal immigrants, leading some to fear they're out of step with the country. I believe that's exactly right. Those who voted for Brexit and Trump don't take kindly to their Democratic vote being abused, and their retribution comes at the ballot box. If people think Boris Johnson's earthquake was big, just wait till the Senate acquits President Trump and he uses that victory to storm to re-election. Meanwhile, the Fusion GPS founder, who is deeply involved in creating the whole Russia dossier that underlay the Russia hoax, claims, and this isn't satire, that Russia was behind Boris Johnson's victory. The guy whose fingerprints are all over the discredited Russia collusion hoax is now ginning up efforts to undermine the UK election results. I mean, I'm telling you, this is absurd beyond belief. Give him credit, he's either very brave or very stupid to try running this gambit again. Perhaps he expects the same elitist UK culture that once threw a guy in prison for trying to report on a racially sensitive child sex abuse conspiracy will shield him from real scrutiny. Or maybe he thinks the world is still credulous enough to believe him. Unbelievable. Before the British people even had a chance to cast their vote, there was an attempt here to derail another set of election results and hamstring Boris Johnson's ability to govern. Get this. Lynn Simpson and Peter Frisch, these are GPS Fusion guys, penned an editorial published in The Guardian asserting Russia was behind the triumphant re-election of Brexit, supporting Conservative Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Simpson and Frisch are now urging the British government to launch an investigation into Russian interference, a la Hillary Clinton, in its elections, mirroring the size and scale of the U.S. Robert Mueller probe, a 2-year investigation studying a Russian collusion conspiracy theory that did irreparable harm to the United States and was based on a web of its own Russian interference, the editor's title. Don't they understand? The Mueller investigation collapsed. It showed there was no hoax, no interference. Completely embarrassing, absolutely stunning stuff, Louisa. Your thoughts about this latest effort to undermine a conservative victory in the UK, which I have no doubt is a similar victory in 2020 here in the USA?
Well, I think it's very clear that Boris Johnson is definitely, the UK Donald Trump, and he knows he was elected to take, to take the UK out of the European Union, and it's going to happen. And people are, the people are happy about it, and it's, had to be done. Theresa May wasn't going to do it.
You're absolutely right, Louisa. You got it right. Meanwhile, read the IG report on the FBI surveillance of the Trump campaign, which states that although it claims they had a legitimate purpose to investigate, the Bureau committed a series of wrongdoings. Indeed, it will become clear that the justification was also fabricated, but it didn't fall within the scope of IG Michael Herowitz's analysis. He has criticized the FBI for significant inaccuracies and omissions in its application to surveil former Trump campaign aide Carter Page. Stating agents failed to meet basic obligation to make sure their applications were accurate. In other words, it was based on falsehoods, deceptions, and lies. We do not speculate whether the correction of any particular misstatement or omission or some combination would have resulted in a different outcome. Nevertheless, the department's decision makers in the court should have been given complete and accurate information so they could meaningfully evaluate probable cause before authorizing the surveillance of a U.S. person associated with a presidential campaign. It specifies 17 inaccuracies involving 3 applications filed under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which inflated the Bureau's justification for surveillance against Page. Despite the errors, the Horowitz concluded the FBI did not act improperly, which is very embarrassing to me and reminds me of Jane Comey reporting all the reasons we knew Hillary's abuse of her email was completely improper in violation of U.S. protocols and the law, and nevertheless said no reasonable prosecutor would pursue it. Meanwhile, U.S. Attorney John Durham, who appears to me to be the real deal, stated he did not agree with the Inspector General report about the legitimacy of the inquiry from the beginning. Based on evidence collected to date while our investigation is ongoing. Last month, we advised the IG we do not agree with some of the conclusions as to predication, meaning the justice are opening, and how the FBI case was open, he said in his statement to reporters. Horowitz found there were serious performance failures by supervisory and non-supervisory agents, including 17 significant errors in the FISA application, but nevertheless said there was no evidence of intentional misconduct. That is truly incredible. 17 errors, all of which are favorable to this investigation and unfavorable to Trump, and they were not intentional. Give me a break. Durham, who continues to investigate the origins of the Russia investigation, said his investigation would be more robust, meaning more accurate and complete, including details of actions of persons outside of the Justice Department. Meanwhile, Comey tries to excuse himself by saying now in a belated interview on Fox News with Chris Wallace that he was wrong, that the FISA abuse by the FBI was not acceptable after all. On this week's broadcast, the former FBI Director James Comey said a Justice Department Inspector General Horowitz report on the launch of the probe was use of the Foreign Intelligence Act was unacceptable. But Comey said, he really said, he's right, I was wrong, I was overconfident as director, in our procedures of the FBI and justice have built over 20 years. I thought they were robust enough. It's incredibly hard to get a FISA. I was overconfident in there because he's right, there was real slopping. The 17 things that should have been in the application, or at least discussed and characterized differently, it was not acceptable, so he's right, I was wrong. Meanwhile, Trump rips impeachment, says the FBI spied on the campaign, which is 100% accurate. The Russia witch hunt, Trump told the campaign rally in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Then the Inspector General's shocking report proved the Obama FBI obtained secret warrants to spy on my campaign based on a phony foreign dossier of debunked smears paid for by crooked Hillary and the DNC. 100% correct. It even turns out, Louisa, that Hunter Page actually was operating as a source of information for the CIA in his Russia contacts, which the FBI omitted in all of its discussions. In other words, he was acting at the behest of a government agency, the CIA, where the FBI made it out that his Russian contacts were all initiated voluntary by Page, as though he were somehow being subversive. It's outrageous.
Yeah. Well, there were plants put in there. There were, you know, they were there, and it was just a mess. I mean, I don't know, Jim. I'm glad this is all coming out in the open, but I'm so tired of how long it's taking, aren't you?
Well, of course. Well, of course. Absolutely.
It's like they're still talking about it as if it's a real issue. What's a real issue is the abuse of power, and it's the reckless, irresponsible abuse of their power to target anybody they want. And if they're doing this to a president, well, you know, Jim, that they're doing it to us, because they are. They're doing it to you, and they're doing it to me.
Meanwhile, McConnell says Trump has no chance of being removed. In an exclusive interview with Sean Hannity, McConnell is quick to point out the impeachment sham is a highly partisan effort, with the realization that Trump's actions don't amount to high crimes and misdemeanors. The case is so damn weak coming from the House, he told viewers in a massive understatement. We know how it's going to end. There is no chance the president's going to be removed from office. The Kentucky Republican noted he expects some Democrats to run away from the Senate vote, likely to be held swiftly after a break in January. My hope is there won't be a single Republican who votes for either of these articles. And Sean, it wouldn't surprise me if we got 1 or 2 Democrats. I predict, in fact, they're going to get many more. House Majority Whip James Clyburn admitted earlier this week he expects to lose some Democratic votes due to the divisive nature of impeachment. I do believe that when it comes to something as divisive as impeachment, we have to leave members up to their own conscience. We do expect to lose some. Reports surfaced Thursday indicate McConnell has every intention of making sure Trump is acquitted. CNN reported 2 Republican senators have said McConnell will push for a vote to acquit the president rather than to simply dismiss the charges. Are Democrats fleeing a sinking impeachment ship? The Washington Post is reporting Democrats, not Republicans, will see defections in the impeachment vote, maybe a lot of them. Even the low-end estimate they're reporting indicates at least 6 Democrats are expected to switch sides, some numbers much higher. The Washington Post uses a paywall, so we'll point our readers to the Breitbart version for reference. Bade and DeBonis quote 3 senior House Democratic officials saying there will be at least a half a dozen Democrats who join with Republicans to oppose impeaching Trump, but a 3rd Democratic aide told them there would probably be many more than a half a dozen defectors. Lawmakers and senior aides are privately predicting they will lose more than 2 Democrats who oppose the impeachment inquiry rule package in late September, according to multiple sources. 2 senior Democratic aides said the total could be as many as a half a dozen. A 3rd said the number could be higher, which I predict. Generally speaking, if leadership of the majority is publicly leaking, they expect a half a dozen defections a week before the actual vote. The number of defections on said vote is likely to be much higher. It's remarkable Democrats are now readily admitting they will lose at least 6 Democrats on the vote, probably more. But they've confirmed that Representative Jeff Van Drew, Democrat of New Jersey, will vote against the articles of impeachment, just as he voted against opening the impeachment inquiry to begin with. Here's a brilliant Ben Garrison cartoon, full speed ahead, the impeachment ship at the bottom of the ocean, on top of Mueller, Hillary on the bow, Nadler, Tlaib, Schiff, Pelosi, Mr. Tingles, Chris Matthews, flying the flag of Russia, 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 full speed ahead to disaster.
Yeah, that accurately depicts it, Jim. Very much so. And it's a sinking ship. It's already sunk. And, propping up Hillary Clinton and, giving her some facial surgery, a nick and a tuck, isn't going to help them. She lost against Donald Trump. Look at this, Jim. She lost against Donald Trump in 2016. And now we found out about all the server problems, all her using the server. We found out all about, the IG report initially said there were crimes against children committed by the Clinton Foundation, by Hillary Clinton, which hasn't come out yet. The president's done all these incredible things for the country, and they're going to put her in to run against him? It doesn't make sense. She doesn't have a chance in hell. Not even in hell to win the election.
Here, time is supposed to represent the person who, for good or for bad, had the greatest influence on events worldwide. I can guarantee it was not Greta Thunberg. That's simply ridiculous. It featured Adolf Hitler as the man of the year because he had the greatest influence. Obviously, it was Donald Trump. Now, he's being parodied by Andy Horowitz, who's a brilliant satirist. Trump named her by Popular Sociopath magazine. They actually have to spell out in the reader-supported news that this article is satire because too many of their readers are so dim-witted they would have believed it. For the 3rd year in a row, Donald J. Trump has been named Person of the Year by the magazine Popular Sociopaths, the publication announced Thursday. Once a year, we at Popular Sociopath recognize a person who best epitomizes sociopathic personality disorder, which manifests in antisocial behavior and a total absence of conscience and concern for others. Hartland Doranson, the magazine's editor, said, "We're delighted to bestow this honor once again on Donald J. Trump." Dorsett said that Trump bested a daunting roster of competitors for the title, including the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, a Fox News host Tucker Carlson, and Trump's own son, Donald J. Trump Jr. Honestly, though, it wasn't close, the editor said. When asked if he reached out to his son since surpassing him for the magazine's honor, Trump told reporters, "Why would I do that? I don't care what he thinks or feels. This is all about me." What a stupid question. You're worthless. Embarrassingly bad. Meanwhile, get this, and it ties in with the video we have. Ukrainian official reveals 6 criminal cases open in Ukrainian. Trump spoke to the press Saturday at the White House as he departed to Florida for speeches before the Israeli-American Council National Summit and a Republican fundraising dinner. Only reporter El Rion has been traveling with Rudy Giuliani reporting on his investigations in Hungary and Kiev, Ukraine. In her report released Sunday night, she mentioned Ukrainian officials showed her 6 criminal cases involving the Bidens, Joe Biden and his son Hunter. Meanwhile, polls show Hillary Clinton is the new 2020 Democratic runner. This is
polls. What poll?
Recently, findings of a new poll showing Hillary Clinton as a Democratic front-runner with a panel on Daily Blast Live. For Schulman and her Democratic compatriots, this is not a joke, but a serious hope. Capturing their attention was the fact that a new Harvard-Harris National poll found Hillary Clinton to be first in a hypothetical race. Nominee. According to the Washington Times, Mrs. Clinton drew 21%, followed by former Vice President Joe Biden with 20%. When registered Democrats was asked who they would support for the 2020 party presidential nod, if she and former Secretary of State John Kerry were added to the mix. Placing third in the hypothetical race was Bernie Sanders at 12, followed by Elizabeth Warren at 9, and Michael Bloomberg, former New York City mayor, at 7. Dick Morris, a former advisor to Bill Clinton, says people should take this more seriously than they are. My feeling is that she wants to. He said, if Biden goes away, there's an opening for her. If Clinton is polling better than declared candidates, that's terrible news for her party. Watch the video to see how hopeful some on the left are that Hillary will try one more time. If you want a good last, go to the 241 mark and listen to the reason Schulman thinks Clinton would be a great choice. But Louisa committed a catastrophe. I have already documented her use of 6 to 8 body doubles. This is another body double. This is not Hillary Clinton with plastic surgery. This is somebody else, and she looks like a chipmunk. The problem now is played herself in this fashion can no longer appear in public. This is a catastrophe for Hillary Clinton. This is the most colossal political blunder of her stunning career, which is littered with political blunders. Louisa.
She looks like a chipmunk. You're right, Jim. Look, whoever that plastic surgeon is, I don't know where you got your license from, man, because it was really a bad job. You're absolutely right. It's not her. I believe there's a clone. I do believe there's cloning. And I do think that we can clone animals, and I know that we've cloned people. It's, that's what I think. But there are doubles. There are doppelgangers as well. I just think it's BS.
I did a study. It's called Fake News Issues of Identity. You can find it at 153news.net. Fake Issues of Identity, where I went through Lee Oswald, Paul McCartney, Hillary Clinton. I mean, you got to see it to believe it. Even during the national debates, with Bernie Sanders on the one hand, with Donald Trump on the other, it was not Hillary Clinton on the stage. It was a younger, thinner, healthier person who had a voice box, which gives her the sound of the voice of Hillary Clinton unmistakably. It's Hillary Clinton's voice, but it's not Hillary Clinton's body. It's not Hillary Clinton. You have to see it to believe it. She's got away with this so long now, and I believe her brain has been damaged. That she was targeted again is incredible, Louisa.
Well, I want to see this article, Jim. I'm going to publish it on my on the news page and tweet it. I want to see this article. Did you consider in the CGI factor? Because I know there's so much CGI out there to make people seem like it's them when it's just like a CGI creation of them. Unless you see them in person, you don't really know if it's really a real broadcast because they have this technology now, deep fake, So how do you know the difference?
Louisa, the point I'm making is having now presented herself in this guise on the
Yeah.
right, which is so removed from what she actually looks like on the
Yeah.
left. She can no longer present herself in public. I mean, this is incredible. This is a colossal political blunder. I mean, if this really is nothing but plastic surgery for Hillary Clinton, she made herself look ridiculous.
Yeah.
This is embarrassingly bad, Louisa. I mean, monumental catastrophe for Hillary as a candidate.
I agree, but I'd like to see that. That would be very interesting for our viewers. So, so look for our go to Jim. It's on your blog, right? Your article.
Yeah. There's an article there about. I'm still trying to figure out why Hillary lost, and then you scan down, there are 20 or 30 major scandals, and you're still scratching your head. But I precede it with this image here. But I also have a tweet about it too, Louisa. Also,
Yeah, I definitely would like to get that published out there so people, viewers can look at that in more detail, because I think this shocked a lot of people when this came out. Definitely.
well, it should, but now they got to understand. Go back to 153news.net and watch fake news issues of identity and see how often a New York Times reporter had Hillary on Broadway going to 4 different plays. And I wrote him and said that was a very interesting article, but did he realize that none of those were Hillary Clinton? I mean, it's just amazing, Louisa, what this woman has got away with.
Yep.
Meanwhile, we have Virginia lawmakers threatening a Second Amendment sanctuaries with a Virginia is a new battleground of the Second Amendment after the most recent election of the state's House and Senate. Both haven't wasted a moment in attempting to gut the gun laws in what has historically been a permissive state. Since the above article was written, it should be noticed the Second Amendment sanctuary counties are at 80. One sheriff has even vowed to deputize citizens should these unconstitutional laws pass. After the public outcry, Governor Northam has said a provision will be added for current gun owners. In this case, the governor's assault weapons ban will include a grandfather clause for individuals who already own assault weapons, with the requirement they register their weapons before the end of a designated grace period. Northam spokeswoman Alina Yamonski said in a statement Monday, "Good try, but no cigar. Gun owners aren't going to take this line down. We've written about Second Amendment sanctuaries popping up across the nation, and now Virginia is joining the fight. According to Gun Rights Watch, practically the entire state is saying no." Check out this map. All those greens are Second Amendment sanctuary counties. Now get this, Louisa. What they've done is to adopt the liberals' technique of creating illegal alien sanctuary cities. So they're creating Second Amendment sanctuary counties. This is far more powerful and is going to make a major difference. The Democrats have blown it big time by moving aggressively to confiscate weapons from the American people, and obviously legislation is a prelude to confiscation. Bringing in the National Guard to confiscate guns or override sanctuaries could only end in one way: a bloodbath. Although one must wonder whether the National Guard members would comply with a governor over their friends, family, and neighbors. It's going to get ugly fast. As serious as these legislators are about getting guns off the street, Virginians are equally serious about defending their right to bear arms. It's the ultimate game of chicken. It looks like we really have reached the point of out of my cold, dead hands. Virginia gun owners, myself included, have no intention whatsoever of complying with this gun grab. And no conciliatory, you can keep them, but you have to register them. Gesture is going to suffice. The only question remaining is who's ready to die on this hill. Think about it, Louisa. Think about if rural homes were required to give up their guns. Then you could have marauding gangs come from urban areas and trash them, run riot, murder them, rape their daughters, steal their goods because they've been unable to defend themselves. This is a disgrace. So now Northam, the governor, in the face of this opposition, is seeking to downplay it, saying all they have to do now is to register. But that's not going to go anywhere. And now the governor of Washington State is making a similar move. This is catastrophic once again for the Democrats. This is another guarantee. They aren't going to make it in 2020. They're going to go down hard.
Look, Jim, a couple of things I want to say about it is, aren't those sanctuary cities unconstitutional to begin with? I think there are challenges going on right now about these.
I suspect they are, but violating the Second Amendment is grossly unconstitutional.
Well, of course it is, but it just seems like the whole thing is a threat against our Constitution. But you know what, Jim? If it takes this to get people to finally be a country by the people, they need to step up and do something. I mean, I was thinking about this morning, and it's like something has to happen. You have to push them too far. This will push people too far. I believe it will.
Yes, I agree. It's happened. They have pushed people too far, and it's fascinating. It's not going to play out well for the Democrats.
Right.
Meanwhile, battling hoaxers in court, Sandy Hook families replay a tragedy. How did you say one last goodbye to Noah? This was an article in the New York Times written by a reporter who actually came out for my damaged trial, Elizabeth Williamson. A month before what would have been his son Noah's 13th birthday, Lenny Posner told a jury about the last time he saw him when he dropped him off at school on December 14, 2012. It was cold, but he jumped out not wearing his jacket, and he had one arm in one sleeve and his backpack on the other arm, and he was kind of juggling both and walking into the school that way, Mr. Posner told a Wisconsin jury in October, and that's the last visual that I have of Noah. Noah Posner was one of 20 first graders and 6 educators killed in the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting in Newtown, Connecticut 7 years ago this week. Since then, some of the victims' families have been battling an online phalanx of conspiracy theorists who have threatened and tormented them, advancing false claims that they were actors in a government-backed hoax aimed at confiscating Americans' firearms. Mr. Posner was the first family member to turn to the courts, fighting an array of hoaxers, as he calls them, including Alex Jones, who peddled falsehoods about the shooting on his InfoWars radio and online shows. Mr. Posner supplied Noah's birth and death records and an DNA sample that matched Noah's, stored as a little drop of blood on a special piece of paper at the Connecticut Medical Examiner's Office, said Jake Zimmerman, Mr. Posner's lawyer. A judge in the case in Dane County Circuit Court in Wisconsin ruled that Mr. Fetzer had defamed Mr. Posner, and on October 15th, the jury awarded him $450,000. Mr. Fetzer intends to appeal. Mr. Posner's legal team represented him without charge, absorbing costs and lawyers' time that Mr. Zimmerman estimates will top $1 million. There's no escaping the emotional cost of litigating the truth of a murder in a proceeding requiring families to repeatedly relive the worst episode of their lives and expose themselves in person to conspiracists targeting them. Earlier in the case, Mr. Fetzer was fined for contempt of court for sharing confidential material in the case, including Mr. Posner's videotaped deposition with other hoaxers, including Wolfgang Halbig, a conspiracist who's tormented Mr. Posner and other families for years. I did that because I'm convinced that the person who appeared in court is not the same person whose photograph has appeared worldwide. And you can find proof of it on a blog of mine, which says Dane County judge finds conspiracy theorists guilty of contempt. You can look at the images and judge for yourself, because I paid a $7,000 fine to get that into the court records. Here was a comment I posted about the New York Times article, which was up for 8 hours. What you aren't being told is 13 experts, including 6 current or retired PhD professors, who established that the school had been closed by 2008, that there were no students there, and that it was a FEMA exercise presented as mass murder to promote gun control, which members of the Obama Department of Education confirmed to another of our contributors. We even found the FEMA manual for the drill. Amazon.com banned the book less than a month after it had gone on sale. But I released it for free as a PDF, which you can download for free. Read the book. You are being played. Noah was a fiction made up out of photographs of his older stepbrother when he was a child. It's all in the court files. But reporters like this one are not about revealing the truth, but concealing it. The law has been converted into a weapon to attack those of us who seek deception and are doing our best to inform and protect the public. Judging from the comments here, alas, they are winning and we are losing. For a brilliant assessment of the trial for damages from one who was there, check out The Legal Lynching of a Truth Seeker, it should be, rather than Truth Teller, at unz.com. Two forensic document examiners concluded that I was right. And not only was the document I published and addressed in the book not authentic, but three others that surfaced during the course of the case were as well. The court ruled in spite of the fact that the standing of the death certificate was in dispute. This was taken down after 8 hours, and they closed the comment section on this article, apparently because too many were siding with me. Now, my attorney discovered that, in fact, there'd been a legal blunder committed in this case because there had been no finding of negligence on my part. In other words, it's an element. You cannot have liability without fault. And they never bothered to establish I was negligent, even though the court had ruled early on that I was not going to be permitted to produce all of the evidence that Sandy Hook had been a FEMA drill, which we find in the book. He responded to the observation of negligence by claiming that I had not raised the issue, when it was not my role as a defendant to raise the issue, but the plaintiff's role to prove it, which he failed to do. Instead, even though he ruled out all evidence about Sandy Hook, here is part of the judge's response on page 9, where he's trying to conceal the fact that there was an enormous legal gap here, that I cannot be held responsible because they never proved I was liable. No reasonable person could come to the conclusion that someone fabricated or falsified Mr. Posner's son's death certificate. No reasonable person would believe that President Obama hired crisis actors to stage a pretend school shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in order to advance the former president's supposed agenda on gun control. No reasonable person could consider what Leonard Posner tried to tell Dr. Fetzer and his fellow researchers immediately after the shooting and come to the conclusion that Noah Posner never lived and thus never died. It is impossible to imagine that anyone in today's digital world could believe, much less conceive, that 300 or 400 actors could or would keep this secret safe and not be lured into sell this fantastic story to the highest bidder. Yet even today, even now, Dr. Fetzer would have everyone believe that nobody died at Sandy Hook. Based on the facts submitted to this court in the parties' cross motions for summary judgment, this court for a second time finds that Leonard Posner has proven all the elements of his claim for defamation, including that Dr. Fetzer did not exercise ordinary care in writing the things he did about Noah Posner's death certificate, or saying the awful and untrue things he wrote about his grieving father, Leonard. That's coming from the judge, who's supposed to be an impartial arbitrator, and who wouldn't allow me to introduce evidence, the massive evidence, even though it's all in the court record, that Sandy Hook was a FEMA exercise presented as mass murder. From a logic point of view, this is called begging the question. From a legal point of view, it's called an irrelevant appeal because they never established that I was negligent. Here we find further evidence of what's going on, because not only did Amazon ban Nobody Died at Sandy Hook less than a month after it went on trial, but they've now banned 5 more books about these fake shootings. The Parkland Puzzle, I suppose we didn't go to the moon either. Political theater from Orlando to Dallas and beyond, and Nobody Died at Boston. All staged events where the banning of the moon book appears to have been because it not only includes chapters about faking the moon landing, about the death of Paul McCartney and his replacement, but about the Holocaust for Amazon, and about 1,000 books at the request of the Anti-Defamation League. So now 12 of the books we have published at Moonrock Books have been banned. Absolutely astonishing. Consider this to be your conspiracy research library. Again and again, I brought together the best expert to sort out what really happened. Take advantage of this opportunity while it lasts, because we are turning into a fascistic state, banning what we can see, what we can read. These books may not be around forever, and while you're there, if you are so inclined, the donate button would enable you to contribute to my legal defense fund, none of which is going to offset the absurd $450,000 award by the jury, but only to pay for my lawyer and the fees involved in the trial, which I expect to occur after the appellate court reverses this wrongful decision by the Supreme Court. Great pleasure to be with you to do these shows together.
Thank you very much, Jim. I just find it interesting how they complain about the anguish of litigating something, and nobody's forcing him to litigate anything.
Yeah, it's true.
He's voluntarily putting himself through this. So it's
you bring that up because during the trial for damages, where we had a jury of 12 Madison citizens, all under the age of 30, one man and 11 women, all of whom professed they'd never even heard of Alex Jones. They had a video deposition from a psychiatrist who never met Leonard Posner, but diagnosed him over the phone, where he was insisting that Leonard was recovering from the PTSD induced by the death of his son until he read these sentences in the book over which I was sued, and that's supposed to have now induced what's going to be permanent PTSD. What he didn't mention is that Leonard Posner has been very aggressive at going after those who have been exposing Sandy Hook as a hoax, removing 1,555 videos from YouTube, boasting about during an interview with a fellow in Berlin who has been implicated in a number of false flag attacks in Europe, that he and his Honor Network had been responsible for the removal of tens of thousands of items from the internet, tens of thousands of content items, which is ridiculous if he actually suffered from PTSD, because one of the key symptoms is avoidance of any stimuli that remind you of the event. And I guarantee you those 1,555 videos were from Sandy Hook skeptics who were explaining why it was a hoax, which implied thereby that any allegations of death on that occasion were fabrications and fakery. It's stunning.
Well, Jim, look, we all wish you the best of luck. You know that we have always talked about this, and it is your free speech right to your opinion. And when you review facts, you know, it's based by fact. And of course, libel is also defendable by truth. So folks, have a great week. We'll be back next week with another POTUS report. And, you know, we're entering the holiday season. So happy shopping and happy seasons, and watch all those holiday cookies. I know I've overindulged more than I should have. So enjoy your holiday and be safe. Have safe travels. Don't drink and drive, please, folks. And we'll be back next week with another POTUS report. Thank you, Jim. And thanks to our viewers. And this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report.